The instinct when you see your child freezing or avoiding the ball is to encourage more. That instinct makes sense. But freeze and avoidance are not the same problem. And neither the freeze nor the avoidance is actually a confidence problem at its core. Both of them are your child responding accurately to what the practice environment has trained them to do, which means the place to intervene isn't the child, it's the environment. Before I get into what drives each pattern specifically, if you want help building environments that address both, I've built a free tool for that. The link is in the description below. A match presents a specific kind of information, opponents whose positions change based on what your child does, space that opens and closes in real time, choices between options where the best answer depends on what an opponent does. That's the demand, that's what the game asks for. The freeze happens when your child has not trained to read that kind of information under pressure, not because they lack ability, but because the practice environments they've spent the most time in present a fundamentally different kind of problem. A cone to go around has one correct answer and it doesn't move. A predetermined passing sequence has one correct answer and it doesn't react to what your child does. Both train the execution of a decision, not the reading of a situation where the best decision changes depending on what an opponent does. So when the match presents that kind of information under competitive pressure with consequences in front of everyone, your child is unprepared. One thing worth mentioning here, because it doesn't come up nearly enough, or maybe that's just my physio bias speaking, the same mechanism that produces the freeze in the game on Saturday, moving without having read the environment, that appears in 4 out of 5 non-contact knee injuries at the professional level. The freeze in youth football and the serious ligament injury in adult football are different expressions of the same underlying failure. The same practice environment that addresses the freeze is the one that builds the physical resilience that reduces the chances of your child rupturing their ACL. The freeze isn't just anxiety about the occasion, it's more likely to be the absence of preparation for the specific kind of demand and the body's honest response to being asked to respond to something it's never been asked to respond to before. The tell? Well, a freeze doesn't look like deliberation. There's no body language of choosing between options. There is simply stillness where movement should have been. The fix is to reduce the information complexity until your child can begin to respond to it, and then gradually increase as your child's capacity to read develops. 1 versus 1 in a generous space with a single small goal. Space is large enough that the opponent can't immediately press, which means success becomes possible and your child starts to experience what a real opponent actually does. Over sessions, reduce the space, add a second goal, add a second opponent. The information increases as the ability to process it grows. This one is different in origin, and that matters for the fix. The child who avoids the ball has probably had repeated experiences where receiving it under pressure led to something uncomfortable, a miscontrol in front of teammates, a badly wayward pass, visible failure in a moment that felt significant. The child learned accurately that receiving the ball produces discomfort, so they stop seeking it. And this isn't psychological frailty, it's a learned response to a consistent environmental pattern, and it's a completely rational one. The environment kept delivering uncomfortable outcomes when the ball arrived. Your child adapted. What reads and looks like avoidance from the sideline is your child being very effective at protecting themselves from a pattern they've experienced repeatedly. The tell here is that they'll do everything else. They tackle, they press, they work hard across the whole pitch. But when the ball is coming directly to them, there's a subtle shift. They might let it run past. They don't call for it. Pull back just before the moment of contact. They make themselves unavailable in a way that can be easy to miss if you're not looking for it. The fix can be to redesign the environment so that receiving the ball always comes with a safe option, so that the uncomfortable moment your child has learned to anticipate is taken out of the equation entirely. A 2 versus 1 game where your child is always on the 2-player side means they always have a teammate to play to. They're never isolated with the ball in a moment of high pressure. Miscontrol has lower consequences because help is immediately available. As comfort builds, you move from 2 versus 1 toward 1 versus 1 with a larger space. The threatening quality of the situation can be reduced gradually, while the confidence to receive builds gradually with it. Encouragement isn't bad in itself, but encouragement doesn't change this pattern because it doesn't change the environment. The environment is where the learning happened, and the environment is where it really has to be redesigned if anything is to change. Both of these have exactly the same underlying logic. The environment trained the behavior, and the environment has to change before the behavior can. The instruction is a workaround. The environment is the intervention, and they're not the same thing. What you can start with is directional. Different pattern, different starting point. The freeze asks for more space, a single opponent, enough room that the ball arrives with time to read the situation. Avoidance asks for the safe option to always be there, so the moment your child dreads doesn't come. The specifics depend on your child, your space, what else is in their week, but the direction is something you can act on. If one of these patterns applies to your child right now, start with the environment that matches it. Free tool in the description. It generates practice games at home built around exactly these principles. Try it out this week. If you want me working through which pattern applies, what the environment should look like, and what else in the week needs to change alongside it, apply below. Thanks for watching. See you next time.